how do we start with raising the ambition and the aspirations of that strategic plan? Like it's retaining our top performers and our high performers, and it's reinforcing a culture that they align and connect with that also enables them to perform at a higher level. My view on the future will be it will be somewhat of a hybrid workforce, and HR people teams will actually be managing HR for agents and their human talent. So I think so you need your people, at least like the most high performing people, to help actually build these solutions so that they are effective in doing the type of work that you're trying to unlock.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon for everyone. My name is Tatiana Koval, and this is podcast Happy at Work. In our podcast, we meet with people from different countries that discuss with different topics, but what is common for all my guests, what we are share the idea about human-centered approach. And today my guest is a person who is well known as a person who created a great community about culture engagement and HR strategy. This is Zech. Hi, Zech.
Hi, Tatiana.
Before we are starting today, we decided a conversation about different topics in which you are really a huge professional. I want to know more about you to my audience. Could you please make a short self-introduction about your background, professional experience, and about your wonderful community?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share this stage with you and be in front of your community and this larger audience. But a little context and background on who I am. I'm from a small town in Wisconsin, but I really grew most of my career in the organizational design and psychology space. Some of my earliest roles in my career were in operations and in workplace kind of design. And then I later moved into people ops and the HR function, which where I really grew my passion and also my understanding on the power of company culture and the power of having a thriving culture and what that can do on productivity and engagement and retention. So that kind of led on a journey of, I would say, obsession and passion around this topic, and later found my way working with this amazing community at Achieve Engagement, which we are a global HR people leader community network association, where we design different types of workshops, learning experiences. We do research. We bring our community together to unpack different topics. And it's all about unpacking kind of the different complex themes within the employee experience, within workplace culture, within how work gets done, so that we can continue building a better world of work. So that's where I'm at today.
It's great. It's great. I really recommend to join your community because it helps me, for example, to see a lot of different experts and get a wonderful content. My first question is for you, because we decided to start to talk about strategy and also through the culture perspective. My first question is for you. What could you recommend to companies focus on if you talk about HR strategy for 2026, 2027?
Yeah, well, I would say one of the first things that I've seen when it comes to people's strategy and how people should focus is one, raising the bar in terms of their aspirations and their ambition for the people strategy. When we work with a lot of our members on their people strategies every single year, we get a real inside glimpse onto like what's on their strategic plans, what's on their agendas. And a lot of times we find that they're very like project and task heavy and not often very ambitious and outcome and impact heavy. And that's where we want to like raise the bar on that side of things a little bit. Because what we find in terms of like the disconnect sometimes between the HR function or the people function and the business is the business has extremely high levels of ambition and aspiration and goals and things that they're trying to innovate or do within their industry or within their product or whatever market and customer segment they work with. There's these like very ambitious visions and goals that the CEO, the C-suite, and the organization has. But when you look at kind of people strategy, a lot of times when it's just project and task heavy, it doesn't actually meet the level of ambition that the business has. So there's like an immediate tension there. Like if you think of almost like a rubber band that's stretching in two different directions, where the ambition of the business is moving in one direction, and then kind of the ambition for the people and the people function and the culture is kind of staying put. It's not really raising to the same level. That creates this tension. And you can feel that with a lot of people teams in the C-suite. Oftentimes they're maybe not getting a seat at the table, or when they do, they're not taking or seen as a strategic partner to the business. So I think that's one piece in terms of what we look at in terms of the strategic plan for the people function is just how do we start with raising the ambition and the aspirations of that strategic plan? Like, how can we actually raise it to the same level to at least meet where the business stands in terms of its ambitions for the future of the organization? And now it becomes this really like exciting thing that's in alignment with the business. The C-suite gets excited because now they have like a people strategy that can actually achieve what they're looking to achieve. And you don't have really that tough tension between those two worlds anymore. If anything, they're in harmony and in alignment with each other.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. What you need to focus on the strategy and help for the people strategy to achieve the goals of the organization, because people as assets of organizations are really um, a huge resource for each other. I
Yeah.
think resource number one for achieving goals, not the
Yes.
technology, not only a process, but it's firstly people. I want to ask about your model. I know what when you worked with organization, helping them to design their people strategy, use your CPR model. Could you please explain a little bit more about your model?
Yeah. So Achieve CPR, it's our new strategic
Right.
alignment framework that helps take what we believe are three kind of organizational vital pillars of the people strategy: culture, performance, and retention. Culture being the foundation to this. This is how work actually feels and functions and gets done. You want to kind of have a solid foundation of the culture because what that does is also fuel and align your engine, which is the performance pillar, how strategy actually turns into execution. And then all together, this kind of creates a reinforcement loop into retention, which retention is more of a signal, if anything. It's the outcome when these first two are really healthy, like the culture and the performance pillars. And if you have a high level of retention, obviously that's a signal to the rest of the organization, to the people, to the industry, your customers, even investors that we have a healthy operating business here, right? Like we have something that is retaining our top performers and our high performers, and it's reinforcing a culture that they align and connect with that also enables them to perform at a higher level. So the key isn't like and this is also something I would say I'd notice in a lot of strategic plans is often retention is the thing we're pursuing and trying to impact. That seems like a lot of times with culture and employee engagement and employee experience is one of the main impact areas that seem most achievable and tangible. But ideally, what you want to do is actually create a strategic plan where retention happens when culture and performance are working together and achieving that. So it becomes kind of a little bit of a self-reinforcing flywheel, and not like separate initiatives or projects or change, initiatives and things like that. It's one integrated system. So Achieve CPR is essentially a process and a methodology that organizations can use and go through to one, raise the ambition of the people function to match the business. It helps you also identify the critical plays, projects, and activities that help achieve your culture, achieve performance, and achieve retention, and create that interconnection between the pillars so that you have a highly performing and engaged people function that's in alignment with the business.
Mhm. I couldn't ask you about, I would ask you about the new era of our business now. It's the era of AI.
Yeah.
And I think the era of AI, firstly, from one side, we talk about technology and using technology and what we need to change our people for technology and so on. From other side, I think in this era, they absolutely must focus on the people on what they need and how we could use the people in the era of technology for achieving our goals. Could you share your ideas about what should they do in the era of AI transformation of the organization from a perspective of culture, people management approach, from the people strategy? What should they focus on during these 2 years?
Yeah. So this is obviously a huge topic that organizations and talent are wrestling with, right? And I think a lot of mainstream media channels also kind of present this type of doomsday narrative that people are not going to be relevant anymore. They don't have any purpose or, role in the future of work. Um, and I can't tell, I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell too much of what that future is actually going to be. But in at least the short term and the immediate term, you still need people to execute the work and achieve your dreams and your aspirations as a business. My view on the future will be it will be somewhat of a hybrid workforce, and HR people teams will actually be managing HR for agents and their human talent. So I think that's one thing of how the future of HR and kind of the people function will evolve is right now when humans are not performing or engaging at a certain level, HR has certain practices to manage performance, to develop the performance of their people, to engage them, to align them on decision making, align them on their roles and responsibilities. That will still be a thing with agents as well. So I think in terms of HR, there will be like an interesting kind of development HR leaders need to have to be able to kind of take some of the same frameworks and models that they're applying to their people to also the agents that their people are engaging with or the agents that are autonomously working on their own. I think that's actually really exciting for HR because now their role is like really becoming this like larger strategic partner in how work gets done and how organizations achieve what they're trying to pursue and what their aspirations align with. Now, in terms of like some of your questions around my thoughts on a little bit more of like how the future of work and people's role and focus will look. Um, Again, I think it'll be highly hybrid. And if anything, a lot of this will stem on the front end on how organizations develop their own narrative and approach to it internally. Right now, you're kind of battling against the narratives within mainstream media, which is how many jobs are being replaced by AI, the doomsday narrative of how people won't have any relevancy within the future of work and things like that. So organizations have to be really intentional about their own narrative and their own stance around how they look to leverage these tools and what that means for their people internally. I believe in presenting a much more empowering, co-creative type narrative internally and saying, hey, we are not looking to replace you and your relevancy within this organization. The ideal outcome, in my opinion, is how do we actually unlock your ability to make a bigger impact in your role in this organization? And that could mean on some things, we're just going to take off your plate. We're going to take these tasks off your plate. You still have ownership over the outcomes of this role, but you just don't necessarily need to own or actually do the heavy lifting for some of these tasks. That will enable you to just have, from a time capacity standpoint, to work on higher value tasks and work and make a bigger impact in that way. In other ways, these things could actually assist the tasks that you still do spend a lot of time on. So you could do them at a higher level of value or quality or and with more imagination and creativity. So, one, how do you build a narrative internally that's more empowering and creates a more optimistic, exciting future viewpoint for that person versus the doomsday narrative that you're battling against within society? And then the other side of it, I think, is co-creation, is really try to co-create how people are leveraging this within their roles, give them some autonomy as well as like direction on unlocking these capabilities themselves versus like investing a third party tool trying to shove it into this function and now it feels separate from them. It feels like things are being taken away, if you can actually start to co-create the way people are leveraging this within their functions, one, I think you're just going to have a much more bought in and engaged workforce. These people are also going to have a little bit more ownership and empowerment on going, okay, I still am part of this. I still have ownership over this type of outcome that this function has. The approach and way we're doing it, it just looks a little different. It just includes some different tools and resources, and if anything, like coworkers that I can leverage. Um, the other piece I also think is you need that intellectual knowledge to build effective AI agents and effective tools, right? So much of the effectiveness of these tools relies on the skills and the knowledge and the processes that we train them upon. Your people have all that intellectual knowledge. Most organizations are horrible at documenting this, right? Like how often someone leaves an organization and all that type of knowledge and industry information and how they did things is just internally in their own heads. So if you aren't co-creating these things with the people that are the most skilled in those functions, you're going to end up with what people experience on LinkedIn all the time, AI slop, right? Like all this jumbled kind of randomness. So you need your people, at least like the most, high performing people to help actually build these solutions so that they are effective in doing the type of work that you're trying to unlock.
Hmm. I think it's really a lot of advices in one answer my questions. But I have another question for you. It's about engagement. I remember when the first time we started discussing engagement, I think more than 15, 20 years ago. Firstly, we are talking what's engagement. It's about extra miles. It's about motivate people to make more of their organization, to open their creativity, to open all their talents for the organization and breathe them uh, in their job. Now we see the situation and engagement could be different, and especially in the situation people have stress from one side, and absolutely agree what we need to create our own positive narrative inside the organization. What could you also recommend if we talk about engagement? What should company do right now for improving and keeping engagement, for creating the real culture who helps people to stay from one-sided person,
Mhm.
to work with their talents, to open their talents and bring them to organization, and understand that it's really the best way for us, for people and for the organization.
That's a great question. So one thing that I think's interesting about engagement, if you look about at like kind of the history of engagement over the last 10, 15 years, especially when employee engagement, employee experience became like more of a mainstream term, um, there's, I think, general societal trends around engagement and what people look for from their organizations. But then I think there's foundational human need kind of elements to engagement as well. I think people want to feel a sense of purpose and relevancy. That's hasn't changed in since engagement really became coined a term. They want to know that, hey, like I have a fit within this larger thing and I have a sense of impact and purpose and relevancy to that. I think back to the AI doomsday piece that we just talked about, the whole AI doomsday narrative is attacking people's relevancy. That's one of the main, I would say, quiet quitting, disengagement drivers that I see within the workforce. People are going, well, in 1 to 3 years or 5 years, whatever time length they put in their heads, they're questioning their relevancy and their purpose within the future of work. So one thing I would say, like we should really double down on and create within our narratives when it comes to employee engagement is purpose, relevancy, and a sense of belonging in that purpose, right? So how do we really reinforce that so people feel that in their roles and also the future of their role within that organization? Like, will I be relevant in this company in 1 year? Can they answer that in their heads? If so, yes, and you're able to communicate that, you're able to create that vision, they're going to feel really engaged about the work that they're doing and their long-term kind of relevancy with that company. I kind of mentioned that there for a second. The other part is sense of belonging, feeling a sense of inclusion and belonging. very aligned with purpose, but a little bit different. This is another foundational need where we desire community, we desire connection with our peers, we desire connection with the work that we're doing, and we want to feel like we belong and we have a sense of inclusion in that. We actually just did a program like a week ago around employee voice and why speaking up or for some people it doesn't feel safe to use their voice within their work context, whether that's because they're from another ethnicity, whether they're at a certain age in their career, whether they're in power or they're, individual contributor. All these things are actually connected to a sense of belonging. Do I feel a sense that my voice matters, that I am part of the tribe of this organization? So those are two from an employee engagement standpoint that I think are really critical right now with the narratives in society that are happening is relevancy, sense of purpose, and then in a world that feels most disconnected and the kind of the lonesome epidemic, people are looking for that sense of belonging. Now, how you achieve those things is a whole nother question. But those are maybe two employee engagement pillars right there. And then I would say, like, in general, then there's societal kind of trends and things. And you can look at that from engagement reports and surveys and research that happens in the industry. Things like, always like pay kind of moves between like the top five. Sometimes it's number two, sometimes it's number six. I mean, a lot of those things just depend on how society and the economy are doing. So I would always like keep a pulse check on those things. But underneath it, there's some of those foundational elements that I would really center on. And for me, and what we try to create within our community, even is that sense of purpose. We want to help HR leaders and people leaders feel a deeper sense of relevancy within the world of work. They're questioning like, if people are not going to be relevant anymore, am I going to be relevant since I help lead the people function, right? Like, so we're trying to create this like narrative in the HR function that you will be relevant and this is how and why. And then a sense of belonging, like that's what our community is all about. It's like, this is a place for HR people leaders. This is, you belong here. This is a place for you to kind of explore and unpack these topics together. So that's how we're doing it. As an organization, you'll want to tap into that and figure that out for yourself.
Mhm. Uh, Previous week, I met with one expert from US, and we discussed the social connection because now there's very a lot of different discussion about the importance of social connection and which role of organizations and about tribes. It's a sense of belonging. Now it's part of our life is really, really important. My next question is a little bit provocative for you. I remember
Okay.
times more than 2 days ago, especially it was from American business culture what we said, nothing personal, just business. But now
Okay.
I could see we have a lot of other type of discussion where the people as the center of our business and everything is personal. So as you as a person should be a part of the organization, you should feel your belonging to the organization. You should align your personal goals and the personal mission with the mission of the organization. The meaning of your life it's should be aligned with the meaning of your work, and the work should be part of actually your personal goals, and you help through your personal goals, which very for organizational goals. My provocative questions for you: what do you think about future work, and what are the paradigm of the leadership, of the culture, of the management? Uh, should you recommend as a great narrative for really make a successful and people-oriented business for the future?
Let me unpack that question for you a little bit. So you kind of talked about the transitions of how companies have prioritized or different things, right? Like at first it's like you serve the business and this is really what we care about, these outcomes and things like that. And now there's also a wave in certain cultures, especially in American, North American cultures around having, yeah, these different connections at a deeper level with our people, with each other, with the purpose of the organization. uh, with themselves individually and the work they're doing. And now we're questioning, okay, where does this all fit into the future? Is that
What
going
was
to
in the future? Because it also now see what the AI comes to work also. So we have some different situation in the world. But what is your recommendation? What your expectation? What is your vision? What should be the next step for
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a hard question. I would say, okay, I got a couple of immediate thoughts. There's like realistic Zech that's like thinking here, and then there's like aspirational crazy, like let's ascend to higher levels of where my head goes. And wow, like I find myself being religious and spiritual in some ways and having larger philosophies about like how do we ascend as a civilization and as humankinds, like ascend to higher levels of purpose, of connection, and so forth. So I can go that way if we want, or we can kind of keep it more realistic terms, or tangible terms. I think in more tangible terms, sometimes I think it is continuously verging towards, okay, how do we deepen connection and impact, right? And now anyone has the capability to build and create and do things that used to require all sorts of budgets and like subject matter experts. Now, anyone, let's say in customer success or an engineer or someone, and they kind of like, if they have a certain level of imagination and they have a certain connection to the purpose and the vision of the organization, as well as a sense of safety and psychological safety and belonging, you pair all those three elements together, now you have like true creators that can unlock things that only like certain people with a level of expertise and imagination could do. So I think that's really exciting. Like you can have builders and unlock imagination within and give people access to tools and resources to bring those ideas to life within a couple hours in a lot of cases, right? So I think that's really exciting. So I think in terms of like how do you unburden people from like transactional task heavy workloads, give them a bigger space to connect with the purpose and impact that you all are trying to make within the organization, have some type of shared ethos or vision towards that, and then leverage some of these new innovations to give them the ability to build, innovate, create, and do that individually as well as collectively as groups. In a lot of ways, I think HR leaders and people leaders can turn into more orchestrators versus even executors for them. Like, how do you orchestrate more innovation sessions, more hackathons, more connection building sessions where people visit the purpose, vision, and kind of the different areas of impact that the organization is trying to make, and then help them explore ways that they individually can bring their ideas to life in seconds. And then as an organization with certain, guardrails around any risks or like compliance issues that could come with leaking data and all these different things. I mean, that's a whole other ballgame that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. But um, there's a lot of exciting things that we can do when we connect to that higher level of purpose and we do it as a collective on a journey together towards wherever that destination is or that vision is. So I think that's really exciting. And I think that actually connects towards some of the like aspirational pieces that I kind of talk about, like ascending as humanity and ascending like humankind and society to, new levels where there aren't these certain barriers or challenges that we face, like certain health and medical issues that hold us back from thriving in our life, economic impact that often only comes with certain people that have a certain expertise to create certain technologies or resources. Anyone could do that now, right? I think that creates a lot of opportunities for organizations also to even restructure their employment model to include incentives and ways to reward people for their creations within the business versus just a salary, a flat base salary. Um, so I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but I do feel like I'm more optimistic in nature. I know a lot of people are not, and I need those people in my life to kind of help bring me back to reality. But in my more optimistic view, I do feel excited about the opportunity that we can unlock imagination, creativity, and building bigger things at scale with our people versus just trying to like replace their tasks, you know?
As for me, I really agree with you because I think what a co-creation of a positive future of organization, a positive future of people is the best way than waiting for the risks, waiting for some damages and try to avoid them. I have one, two questions for you. My next question is about, you mentioned the psychological safety. It's one of the topic now which widely discussed in a different organization and in different countries, also on the country level about what we need to invest more attention on the people's safety. From your perspective, what should they do? Then we talk about the psychological safety for our organizational culture for the future, from the organizational perspective, from a leader's perspective, and also from an employee perspective. It's for me when I talk about employee, it's not just a person who's object of this tour organization and leader, also a participant of this co-creation of this psychological safety
Mhm.
at work. What do tell about this topic?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one, I want to share this like quick example that's in alignment with this, and then let's unpack it a little bit. But I think what's interesting about psychological safety is there's external pieces, like how that organization operates, the people that you engage with. There's a number of things externally that make us feel psychologically safe or not safe. Then there's internal narratives that we've built over previous experiences, our own narratives, belief systems, true or not, that also reinforce whether we're feeling safe or not, regardless of the external environment around us. And I actually talked to one of our CHRO members that's a part of our community recently, and she just left a very toxic workplace where she didn't feel safe. She didn't feel like she could trust her peers that would maybe blame her for things that she wasn't part of or take credit for things that she brought up. So there's just like a lot of toxic cultural issues in that environment externally that didn't create that psychological safety. She got out, which is great. That's the move, in my opinion. If the external environment's not going to change around you, then you need to change your environment, right? So she moved to this other organization. And this other organization, very healthy culture, awesome leaders to work with. They're not as tense. They're not as criticizing. They're collaborating. They're asking questions for her voice. They're not looking to blame or take credit or anything. She's already being praised and all these different things. But it was interesting as I talked to her about that. She's like, it feels so weird. Like, I don't like it. It's not normal. I'm used to working in toxic environments. This feels not normal to me, which to her then feels not safe, right? Because your narratives and beliefs and your habits and experiences have formed what reality should be like. And now, regardless of the environment, she's built up this internal kind of narrative that still like it's like, whoa, this is unknown, this is weird. It's like something feels wrong and fishy here, you know? So even though the environment's great. So one thing that we've been kind of coaching on with her and talking is like, okay, we got to learn to kind of let go and rebuild new narratives and belief systems that make us actually be able to engage with the actual safe, healthy environment that we're in today. It's kind of like when people grow up in toxic homes, they tend to get into toxic relationships later in their life because even though it's not psychologically safe from an environmental standpoint, it feels at least normal. Like they can at least navigate it. They're used to it. It feels safer than even putting themselves in a safe environment that's not normal, even though that's what they've been conditioned to learn their entire lives, right? So I think that's two parts that I would really reaffirm when it comes to in the future of work in general is there's external pieces as an organization that you really need to work on. That's things like how we make decisions, our systems and processes, our rules and our policies, AI decisions and our AI philosophy. These are like external environmental kind of things that impact the culture and create a certain experience for your people. Then on the flip side, we need to work with our people to help them better understand their own belief systems, their own narratives, their own kind of ways of seeing and being and behaving in the world. And not try to change that, I would say, because I don't think that's really our organization's responsibility is try to change someone and who they are and all these things, but just help them build better awareness in these things. And then they can navigate and better decide, like, okay, is this like old habit or this old belief system that I constructed from this toxic relationship in the past? Is that actually true? Is that actually real? Because this environment I'm in right now doesn't really reinforce that, yet I still hold on to it. Like, okay, let me process that and let go of it. And I mean, I've been working on my own limiting beliefs for like 10 years. So like it's not an easy fix. But I think that's like two ways I would look at it, especially as we think about creating psychologically safe and engaged workforces to engage and embed AI into their work. You need to make them feel safe and confident that you're not going to backstab them in 1 year and replace them. So how do you externally create the environment that reinforces that type of mindset and that narrative? But then also how do you help them develop the right, more productive, progressive narratives internally within themselves that help them thrive when they are in that environment?
Absolutely, absolutely agree. Zach, I have one last questions for you. It's a my common questions to all my guests for the end of our conversation. It's wonderful conversation. I think if we have more times, I think we could spend a lot of hours of discussion about the future of work, future of people strategy. But our last questions for you is what three main tips could you give to the organization who want to build effective and positive uh, the positive people strategy for the future?
I mean, I'll tap right back into our chief CPR kind of framework or philosophy and methodology. So my first tip would be raise the ambition of the people function. To me, it's it when I see certain strategic plans for the people function, they're pretty flat, they're pretty project and task heavy. There's no aspirational goals or visions attached to them. Or if they do have any goals, they're very incremental. They're like, let's just increase performance or engagement by 5%. Like they feel attainable, but they're not enough to like re-energize and reinvigorate the culture and the people function of the organization. So tip number one, raise the level of aspiration, ambition that you have for the people function and the impact that you're looking to create. Tip number two, look at the achieving those aspirations through the pillars of culture, performance, and retention. I would say a lot of times also when I look at certain strategic plans, there's like 10 to 15 things on it. You're spreading yourself too thin. The best strategic plans that I've ever seen have two, maybe three things on it. Sometimes I give myself five things because I need more. Like I'm in like the 10 to 15 things thing. But what you end up doing is you try to do a lot, you never become great at any of it. So I think also slimming down your focus, eliminate some of the extra noise. And a way that you can identify focus is by centering on these key pillars of culture, performance, and retention. From there, then, my third tip would be to also define what you're not doing. Like as you raise the ambition of the floor, the ambitions of the business, and you identify your focus, you also should be identifying what do we need to stop doing? What no longer serves that aspiration that we're doing? what doesn't actually achieve those goals that we shouldn't be spending our time on anymore? Or at least should we parking lot for later? Like that sometimes feels better than saying we're not doing it. We're just going to parking lot it for later, right? Like it's not going away. We'll revisit in 3, 6, 12 months. But like, what are you going to parking lot? What are you going to stop doing? And I hopefully like for a lot of the HR leaders out there, that should feel relieving in some ways, right? Like you're right now, you're spread thin, having to do a lot with very little. Let's try to do a lot with little, you know? So, or a lot of impact in a little focus. I mean, so, those would be my 3 tips. Raise ambition, filter through the pillars of culture, performance, and retention to give you better focus and alignment to actually achieve those aspirations, and then define what you're not doing. What are you going to parking lot?
Thanks. Thanks for a great advice for our audience. And then I want to ask you to you could invite people to you join your community in some of your events. I remember what you also organized one of a great events. So now we have possibility to say people, and after that you also could post a link on our LinkedIn conversation and later on our podcast, which helps people to join a community. But maybe some words about your community and what people could achieve through connecting this year.
Yeah. Well, our main website is achieveengagement.org, so you can always find our upcoming programs and our community kind of resources there. We do have a couple layers to it. So we have our open community that's open to anyone and everyone. That's where we do seminars, webinars, research, some additional content there that anyone can access. Most of that's virtual. Then we have our membership community, and this is really where we kind of get to building and kind of co-creating and coaching and strategizing more intimate experiences. That's our EX Leadership Network right here, I think you could see. Um, so that's a membership community. I definitely encourage if you're an internal practitioner navigating these things today and you're looking for an advanced community of learners, of builders who are also passionate about building a better world of work, that would be an awesome community for you to join. From there, we're also hosting 3 Achieve CPR retreats and programs this year. One's going to be in Atlanta in June. Then we're going to have one in Chicago and then San Francisco at the end of the year. So these are going to be full day programs. We're going to have practitioners sharing how they're impacting these pillars within their organizations. We're going to have some playbook whiteboarding kind of coaching sessions where we actually talk about your company specifically and things you could start doing. So if I would say like, become a member, check out the community, but then join us for one of those programs because I'm super pumped for how those came together.
Like, thanks for conversation. Thanks for invitation. It was really wonderful first conversation. Maybe in future they could meet again and have the so deep conversation.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
My name is Tatiana Koval. This is podcast Happy at Work. Stay connected.